Hi, this is Ed. Welcome to The Outer Light. Well, a little breadcrumb and something that could be an absolutely massive, far larger than the firing of the FBI director. If you don't know, James Comey has been fired. This by Julian Assange, of course, the editor-in-chief of Wikileaks, a publisher that's been publishing leaks for a long time now, and also saving the world one leak at a time, at least exposing the corruption so humanity can build up some kind of immune system of resistance against the level of corruption, which now we know after the firing of the FBI director, at least publicly for those not in the know, it's actually, people can actually see it now. But now James Comey's been fired. FBI source says the FBI will now start leaking like Niagara, i.e. Niagara Falls. So that is a very profound and strong statement from the editor-in-chief of the largest publisher of leaks in the world. They say he has an FBI source that says the FBI will now start leaking like Niagara. And what I think this is implying, if we're going to interpret this, just this little phrase, we'll go on to the next one in a moment. Of course, we're analysing this small tweet in detail, but what this could mean is that the brave women, the women and men with integrity within inside the FBI, those people that have seen and they know what's happening in the world with all this corruption, those brave individuals that took down, in fact, 900 pedophiles the last few weeks. Basically major sting operation by internal people within the FBI. So what that means is these individuals that are on the side of good are now going to start leaking like Niagara Falls. They've got documents, hopefully documents that prove the corruption regarding Hillary Clinton, etc. Of course, the door's been opened for them now James Comey's been gone, because basically he was, it seems in my interpretation, just a shadow assailant. He didn't look like assailant against investigation. People thought he had integrity, but he was functioning as assailant to stop investigation, basically to slow step the investigation and then to slow step it to such an extent to bring it to a halt. Just doing it in a way to acclimatize the population to the corruption. So when he said that he closed the investigation, of course, everyone would say, well, it would float outside of the public consciousness. Of course, what they're up against is an international corruption and consolidation of power that operates worldwide, and I think that's what everyone has seen with the Clinton Foundation, which of course is a multinational globalist front in order for, in my interpretation, mass arms dealing, trafficking, bank laundering, all kinds of things, funding wars, moving arms and weapons, cooperating with the bank and arms cartels, setting one country off against the next, bombing Libya in order to just drive up oil futures for those on Wall Street, etc. It is an actual engine of chaos. Of course, the Clinton Foundation is largely inoperable right now, but that does not mean that there's other functionaries out there that actually operate in the exact same way. So you guys will probably be aware of those most famous examples of those. But let's have a look. FBI source says the FBI will now start leaking like Niagara. But please, FBI friends, I guess these are the leakers, full docs, or the press will spin it. Excellent work. Hopefully the FBI leaks those valuable investigations which are absent from Vault 7. Not talking about the actual leaks of Vault 7 by WikiLeaks, but the FBI Vault 7, Vault 8, Vault 9, which were released, which were the Clinton investigation. So basically the FBI Vault had some documents, but of course a lot were missing of the investigation, and probably a lot of avenues that were investigated that probably had really good breadcrumbs in them, but they closed the door on them to stop people from investigating, probably pulling rank on these FBI agents that were doing their job, exposing mass corruption. Now James Comey is fired and gone. Now a new FBI director will take control, hopefully. This FBI director installed because this will be the most important decision Donald Trump can ever make in the history of his at least 100 or so days of his presidency, and even throughout the prior, before he was president, when he was sorting out what potential candidates he would have for his cabinet. Basically, this position either will make or break it for Donald Trump. If he chooses someone that's the deep state operative, then it's over for Donald Trump. They will not stop. They will continue to disseminate around him, to break him down, remove all of his assets until he's blown in the wind, and then they'll probably just push him over and put a new president in place. And basically it'll be Macron 2.0 this time. The deep state will make no mistake. They'll Illuminati up that thing. And they'll just throw that candidate in there to control all the levers within that position of architecture. Of course, the architects of power, as Gary Kasparov says, always adjust the levers in order to control what's below them. But here we have it. Basically a really strong tweet from Julian Assange, basically stating that, of course, an FBI source says the FBI is now says the FBI will now start leaking like Niagara. So Julian Assange has got a close source there within the FBI stating that now other FBI friends will start leaking stuff like crazy. Well done. Cannot wait for that. Of course, I'll be here to report on anything that happens. Major news to come. But then again, Wikileaks will probably have to take a little wee bit of time disseminating the documents. Of course, they've got to format them for publication. Wikileaks is, of course, a publisher. No matter what James Comey, the late James Comey, who was fired, says, or the CIA director or previous director of the CIA or whatever intelligence network, i.e. James Clapper, took whatever position, whatever time in history. He's had so many positions, it's insane. But James Clapper stating that Wikileaks was not a publisher. Well, maybe it's what is James Clapper even doing within the government anymore? I mean, basically he shouldn't be there anymore. I don't know. He perjuried himself, of course, by stating that there was no evidence that Russia interfered with the elections, then coming out and stating, a few months later that there was evidence. Of course, that just depends on probably whatever paycheck he gets from whatever foundation. But anyway, that's just my opinion. I don't really have any other information on James Clapper apart what's reported publicly, but here we have leaking like Niagara. Excellent work. Of course, we have to give that classic thumbs up. Also have to retweet that at some stage today. I won't do that because I'm recording now and it'll screw up the screen a little bit. But, of course, excellent. So, cannot wait for that. And in the meantime, if you don't know, of course, this is James Comey. Just a summary on this. If you haven't seen my other video on this that I did today, James Comey fired. Read full memo sacking the FBI director in full. Basically, in Trump's letter there of the firing, he stated that, "Thank you, James Comey, for telling me on 3 separate occasions I was not under investigation." But that was in the letter when he fired James Comey, but saying that you are fired. Basically, James Comey never saying that publicly because, of course, on the grand chess scale, he wanted to constantly weaken Donald Trump's position. So he always said, I cannot talk about potential ongoing investigations, because that was a lie, because if there's no investigation, he can just state that, especially if he's briefing the President of the United States, and it's the President of the United States and the public's interest to know if the President of the United States, of course, has been investigated. Of course, there's hope that the global arms cartels, the banking cartels and global network that controls most of the world is in for something, and maybe there will be an investigation. Of course, James Comey was in New Zealand a few weeks ago with the head of the spy agency, so maybe they were all planning something, and then Trump became aware of their plans and moved fast. I'm not sure. Maybe they were just talking about the actual Senate hearings and what to discuss, but they all met in New Zealand. Of Of course, all the spies, the 5 spy agencies which rolls out over New Zealand, Australia, the United States, etc. Close allies with these internal pretty much control mechanisms to control the population clandestinely. But in saying that, of course I have respect for the CIA and FBI for the good people in there, but with every good organisation sometimes it gets taken over with absolute corruption. Of course, these organisations can be done to do tremendous good, but they have to hold up the law, and they have to do it in a pretty concrete way. They can't, like, you know, if anybody else, ask yourself the question, if you're caught with 6,000 classified documents on your laptop, would you be let go? Of course not. You'd be in jail until the moon falls from the sky. They'd never let you out. Likely after you're in jail for a while, you come out with a distorted personality and you probably wouldn't know who you are because you'd be probably waterboarded ad nauseum. In the meantime, though, I don't mean to go on, but I just thought that I just wanted to report on that really interesting tweet from WikiLeaks because this is a highly significant tweet. In the meantime, though, this is Ed from The Outer Light. Go and do your own research. I'll link to Julian Assange's tweet in the description. And stay safe, and I'll see you all later.